Hi, Dylan. Can you add me as a co-host?
I don't know that he's there yet, Carrie.
He might have walked away. He had to start it.
Hi, what's going on?
4:01. So I will call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. It's the August 24th meeting of the ASCC. We have 2 items on the agenda. Both of them are action items. One of them was preliminary last meeting, and today we will look at that more closely. And so, Dylan, will you call roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Cook, or Koch,
Here.
Commissioner Sill,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Ross,
Here.
and Chair Breen.
Here.
Okay, let the record reflect that all commissioners are attendance to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And so we'll jump right into oral communications, and this is a time for any persons wishing to address the commission on any subject which is not on today's agenda. You can do so now, but note, however, that we cannot really discuss, that we can hear you, but we can't take any action. Is there
Right.
anyone out there? Okay, so I'm going to close oral communications, and we're going to open it up to items for new business. The first thing on the agenda today is a fence replacement at the creek setback at 838 Portola Road. And the team is there, or the team is here, and so Dylan is going to give a report on this item.
Actually, Jake Garcia, the consulting assistant planner, will present this report. So no worries, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you, Chair. The item before you tonight is an application for a fence replacement in a required creek setback at 838 Portola Road. The applicant has proposed to replace an existing legal non-conforming fence affected by material rot. Portola Valley Municipal Code indicates that when a portion of a fence exceeding 25% of the total length of fence within required yards on a property is damaged or voluntarily removed, any replacement fencing of that portion shall conform to the fence regulations pursuant to a fence permit. The scope of work necessary to replace rotting portions of the fence exceeds 25% of the overall length and therefore requires a fence permit. The fence is located within a 30-foot required creek setback, and per Portola Valley Municipal Code 18.43, when a fence permit application demonstrates that the proposed fence cannot conform to the regulations, given the conditions on the parcel, the ASCC may grant relief from the fence regulations, which is why the item is here before you tonight. The fence is located within a 30-foot, the project site is located at 838 Portola Road. It is a 7,570 square foot lot and is zoned for administrative professional use. Located to the west is Hallett Store. To the east across Salisal Creek is an office building. To the rear are 2 lots with homes under development, and across the street is Christ Church. The property abuts Salisal Creek, which is a channel bounded by 5-foot retaining walls. The required 30-foot creek setback is measured from the top of bank, in this case, the top of the retaining wall. The applicant wishes to replace 97.5 feet of an existing fence along the top of the 5-foot Salisal Creek retaining wall. This is the same location as the existing fence. The fence height is proposed to be the same as the existing fence height, that is 4 feet tall with a transition to 6 feet tall as it runs to the rear of the property. The height transition is located where the fence passes an on-site 35-inch oak tree. As you can see on your screen, the Salisal Creek is labeled in blue. The 30-foot creek setback is labeled in green, and the proposed replacement fence is labeled in red and orange. Orange signifying where the fence is 4 feet in height, and red signifying where the fence is 6 feet in height. The proposed fence materials will consist of grape stakes and pressure treated posts, the same materials at the existing as the existing fence. On your screen is an example of the provided by the applicant. I also want to go back and indicate that this fence actually only runs approximately to where this existing fence label is on your screen. The rear portion of this fence is there's actually no fence here, as well as no fence that runs from the property line to the 30-foot creek setback. So this is an open portion, open to the neighboring properties with no fence being proposed. With that, I will move on to public comment. There's been 1 public comment received since the distribution of the ASCC packet, and it will be read into the record. And staff recommends that the ASCC review the requested architectural review of an application for fence replacement in a required creek setback at 838 Portola Road, subject to the conditions of approval. And with that, I yield back to the chair for any questions. The applicant is available for any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the design team have anything they'd like to present? Or actually, I should ask commissioners if they have any questions at this time.
No questions from me.
No questions from the commissioners? Okay. Does the design team want to make a presentation or add to the comments?
The applicant is Mike Garvey, and he indicated that he would not be making a presentation, just available for questions.
All right, good. Well, then there are no questions from the commissioner, so I will put this out to the public to see if there are any public comments on this item.
Dana, I'd like to read into the record one email we received on Friday, if I could.
Okay, please do.
All right, it'll just take a moment. It's from Lynn Jacobson. I am truly shocked after 15 years we are addressing the issue of fencing on the creek in the wildlife corridor. Back in 2005, among other things, a brief was filed with the Superior Court in California County of San Mateo against Tom Lodato and Saucil Creek Associates. Many town meetings were held over the issue of blocking any part of the wildlife corridor and concluding and verifying it was patently illegal. To refresh your memory, they wanted a fence as a safety measure against falling into the creek for those living in the homes that Lodato wanted to build on the 838 Portola Road site. Our property backs up to that site, which is a crossing for many deer, bobcats, mountain lions. 2 weeks ago with 4 cubs, fox. Last fall, 2 babies wandered on our porch of our guest house and video captured them trying to get on a couch. Over the 58 years we've been here, a number of raccoons, possums, and of course coyotes have only increased our recognition of the importance of preserving nature's at its best. I'm not aware that the law has changed. I'm frankly horrified at the idea of again addressing the same issue. Once you make an exception to the law, then it has to be justified to everyone and waived. Thank you for your attention on this very important matter. Sincerely, Lynn Jacobson, August 21st. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other public comments? All right, well then we'll bring it to the commission. Al?
Okay. Yeah, I was out at the site yesterday afternoon, I guess, and I don't know how we could not have the fence there. It looked very dangerous to me without the fence. I mean, that's a pretty steep culvert. So, you know, I'm not wild about fences, but I'm in favor of replacing the fence.
Okay, are those your comments?
Yep.
Dave?
Well, I share Al's concern about safety. I also share Ms. Jacobson's concern about a fence in that location. And for me, safety is really the only justification for it. But it seems to me that something that's transparent, you know, a welded wire mesh fence would serve the same safety function, but be a little less visually intrusive. Doesn't help with the wildlife corridor issue. But I've never liked that fence, except for the safety issue. I wouldn't mind seeing it not replaced at all. So I guess I would say I'm barely in favor of the proposal, but would prefer a different type of fence.
Okay, thank you. Jane?
Yes, I didn't like the photo of the grape stakes. It looks too close together to me with the, you know, for any wildlife to get through. But then again, you have the safety issue. So I wasn't sure why we were having a closed fence so much as a split rail fence there. But from the safety point of view, I'd say yes, but from the wildlife corridor point of view, I'd say no. So.
All right, well, we'll come back and discuss this. Megan?
Yes, so I think this is a great opportunity for us to change the fence design instead of replacing it with what existed before, which doesn't meet our guidelines anyways. I think it's an opportunity to open up the fence view, of course, instead of the grape stakes so close together. I too do not like a fence close to any creek at all in town, but this safety situation is legitimate. So I would like to see a new fence design come back to us.
Okay. All right, thank you. My comments, I went out to see the site. It's a culvert, you know, it's really not a creaky place. And there are also 2 driveways really that parallel each other. So I aesthetically, in terms of this whole openness, the visual openness thing, I could see it being solid in certain areas. What I would like to see though is a gap on top of the wall under the fence, so animals could get under the fence. And I'd like to see the fence be open after a certain point. So I think it needs more work. Also, as you're pulling out of the site, there's a split rail which ends right at the street, and there's a real visual problem of trying to take a left-hand turn there. There's a 4x4 right at the street with these horizontals going into it. Split, you know, it's a split rail out of the street. I can even see that fencing disappearing. So what do you guys think about putting a gap under the fence over the wall?
I think that's a good idea. And I like Dave and Megan's suggestion of a more open fence too. But I mean, I think that some sort of fence needs to be there, but the fence that's proposed isn't the right fence.
I like the split rail idea. I think a split rail fence would provide all the safety that would be required. If there's some visual screening needed, that could be taken into account for a piece of it. But I like Megan's idea of a split rail fence because it would really allow wildlife to traverse that spot.
I agree. Any other thoughts?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
With regard to the area, let me just say that I am very much in favor of wildlife, and I'm dealing with this for Georgia because I'm the kind of this sat, and have taken it on as a project manager. I'm actually a real estate agent, but I do a lot of project work for my clients as well. And because of the location, this has been somewhat of a challenge to meet all the requirements, but I love a challenge. I would like to tell you, first of all, obviously everybody takes their positions very seriously, and to go out and visit the site, I commend all of you for doing that and want to thank you for your substantial interest. Secondly, the fencing that you saw at the entrance to the parking lot right by where the creek starts to run is what was initially proposed by the town, and that's what we were following up in that location. And we can adjust it however you would like it. We're not opposed to doing that. And then secondly, with regard to the grape stake, the only reason that was put in there is because that's the type of fencing that when we went in to make the repairs was originally there. And literally when we were making the repairs, the fence just fell down. So my one concern, since I have two little chihuahuas, and I'm only worried about if we have a space at least in the parking lot area for wildlife to come in. I would hate to have wildlife coming in there and get run over by a car. That's a concern. That's the only concern I have about leaving that space there. If it's what you want, we're happy to do it, and I will, do whatever you prefer. But we can also do some vertical planks along where the current structure is, and with some space in between for a visual effect. But I just wanted to run that past you and see if at least down where the parking lot area is, are you comfortable with that space for animals to move in and out, or do you think that could be dangerous for them?
Well, let me jump in on that. Appreciate your concern about that. It is a condition that exists all over town wherever we have a road.
Okay.
We get a lot of wildlife crossing the roads. I see it all the time. I see coyotes walking up and down the streets. So I think in general, wildlife is pretty savvy about those kind of conditions. And I wouldn't be especially concerned about this location as opposed to anywhere else in town where wildlife can encounter a paved surface. So I don't think, for me, that's not a big factor.
Well, would vertical planks be workable? And then how high of an opening would you recommend from the ground up to the first piece of fencing?
Well, for me, I like the split rail idea because
Me too.
it has a couple of spaces, one at ground level, one above that.
So do you like so when you're talking about split level, you're talking about what is out at the front of the property now?
Yes, that
That
style,
type of design? Okay.
that style of design.
I just
yeah.
wanted to be clear on that. That'd be fine. And with regard to the height, that height works for you as well?
Yes, I think 4
Okay.
feet is appropriate there because that's,
I'm just talking about the space from the ground up to the first
oh, I
plank.
see what you're saying. Yes, I think that's a pretty standard configuration and
Okay.
would work just fine.
Well,
And the overall height only needs to be tall enough to really implement the safety requirement.
yeah, keep people from, yeah, so would the committee be opposed then if we ran that back along the fence area so that it was consistent?
I prefer that.
I like the wood structure. My recollection is there was some hardware cloth or something in that fence also, isn't there? And I get,
There was at the front up by the roadside.
yeah,
There was, and that again, it was just back to where this old grape stake fence started. That's where it was required. And it was not initially required back from there. But if that's something that the problem is if we do that, then animals can't get through, obviously.
right. I would prefer not to have the hardware cloth. I'd just like to see the wood structure that you've got extended further back.
And do you want the hardware cloth taken off of the front area then as well?
I would, but it'd be interesting to see what other people think.
I would.
It's solid. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
solid feature. I think we should support the split rail thought. And
Okay.
it's legally 4 feet back from the street until you can push up to 6 if you need to, but maybe just stay at 4 feet.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
I think it looks so much better also, but it's much more functional for what I think the committee wants.
The only function is a visual for safety.
Right.
And so I wouldn't put wire on the inside of this fence. I think it's
Agreed.
just.
Yeah.
Right.
So a question for my fellow commissioners, can we, instead of having a full ASCC review of this another time, can we delegate it to a single commissioner
Yeah,
for follow-up?
I would think so.
Absolutely.
And
I
that
mean,
would,
do we even need that, or can we just agree that they're just going to extend what's out at the road now
All the way back.
all the way back and be
I
done
will
with it?
do,
Yeah.
I will do whatever you want me to do, and I'm taking copious notes as we speak.
okay. Well, I could support a motion for approving it with a change of design. It's not something we do very often.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to simplify the process, especially these days when it's so hard to convene a meeting. So
Yeah, we actually were trying to start, we've been trying to convene since last November when we got red tape. So I'm just see all of you.
Okay.
Dana, this is Jeremy. We do have one member of the public who wishes to speak, and I think Carrie's got control of that.
Oh, all right.
Carrie, do you got that?
Yeah, Lynn, you are unmuted. You can unmute yourself and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Hi, Dana. Hi, everybody. I know a couple of you, but you're all old enough to be my grandkids at this point.
you have to be pretty old. I don't think you're that old, Lynn.
I'm 87. Come on. We have the 11 acres backing up here. And we have had what you would call, I wish I could afford post and rail, but the rail type fence. And we've seen them go over it. When I say them, I mean animals. Mountain lions, deer, the coyotes go under. And I think that that solution is very in keeping. I don't know about the law, and I know I fought it with everybody else around here not to ever block the wildlife corridor, but I feel that definitely would not block the wildlife corridor. It allows for everything to get through, under, or over. And visually, of course, we can only see it when we go in the corner to, clear trees and things. So I, for one, and I'd love to speak for the hundreds of us that were involved originally in this issue, I, for one, see absolutely no objection to the post and rail.
Good.
I think it makes sense. I think obviously safety is an issue. My kids used to jump the creek. Believe it or not, it was that small that you could just jump over it, and they'd go over and buy candy unbeknownst to me at the store. But that is an issue now, and we have pulled dogs out of there over the years that have fallen in, and I guess they're more stupid than the lions and the raccoons and all the rest. But I just want to say I completely approve on my behalf of what you've been discussing. And if you want to take a vote now, I mean, save time. You have my blessing.
Thank you.
May I just say one thing, and that is that I know that the person that owns that building is very supportive of the direction that you want to go and the decision that you're making. I know that she will be, so I just wanted to make that comment.
So Dave, do you want to try to proceed with a motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve this project with a change of design. Instead of grape stakes, that the fence be a split rail fence matching what's already on the property with a maximum height of 4 feet. It's for you, Megan.
All right. Is that a second, Jane?
Yeah, that's a second.
Or are you asking a question?
No, that was a second.
A second, thank you. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed, so the motion carries. And that's, are we going to have one commissioner look at it, Dave, or?
I think we can count on staff's review. I'm
Okay,
comfortable with that.
I agree. All right, so we're good to go.
So so we'll work with Jake on this for final review?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Take care. All right, and so we're going to pull up the next group of people. We're moving to agenda item number 2, 138 Goya, Aruna, Gambier. Are people there?
Yes.
Yeah, we're here.
Right.
Greetings.
Greetings.
I'd like to take the opportunity right now, Aruna, on the behalf of our fellow commissioners, to convey our deepest condolences.
Yep.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Dylan, are you going to lead this off?
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead and start it. Let me, oh. Sorry, technical difficulties over here. Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the project before you is a architectural and site development review of a new residence with basement, pool, and associated site improvements. The address is 138 Goya. And so just to reconstitute the commission, this project was reviewed at the July the 13th ASCC meeting for preliminary review. And so the ASCC was generally supportive of the project. including the siding, design, and materials. And so some of the items that were discussed in terms of suggested changes are listed on the slide. So reduction of the overall height of the structure by 1 foot, reduction of interior plate heights by 1 foot, relocation of the proposed residence southerly by 5 feet, the modification of the roof line, and then rotation of the 2nd-story massing. Those are all kind of umbrellaed under the massing changes. And then lighting. The commission recommended that the pool lighting be reduced from 7 to 5 lights. Inclusion of motion sensors or timer control for exterior lighting, and then the reduction of the number of skylights proposed. So that's under the umbrella of lighting. And so before we kind of go into the details, I just wanted to kind of briefly refresh memory, if you will. Oh, I'm sorry. I should refresh my memory on my presentation. So as the project team has submitted revisions to the project based on the ASCC's comments. So these are described below. In terms of the massing umbrella, the main house has been reduced by a net of 1 foot. Staff wants to note that a revised transmittal of the plans was sent earlier this afternoon. There was an error both in the staff report and on the previous plans as an attachment on the heights in terms of the measurements. So the 26 feet and 5 5/8 to 25 feet and 5 5/8, for example, is noted differently in the staff report and on the plans, but those have been corrected. The reduction of the first floor plate height is still the same. It's just noted on the plans a lot clearer. So staff it was more housekeeping in terms of the plans and the measurements. And then, so that kind of encompasses the revisions that were made for the project in terms of recommendations by the ASCC. So reduction of the main house vertical height for 1 foot. And so also the maximum height was reduced by 1 foot. And then the reduction of that first floor plate height for roughly over 1 foot. Additionally, the project team has reduced the proposed pool lighting fixtures from 7 to 5. So we have a net reduction of 2. And then also the exterior lighting will be controlled by time. So it's either motion or time controls. The ultimate decision will be handled at the building permit submittal stage, but staff did add a condition of approval that information should be included in the building permit set at time of building permit issuance. So that is incorporated into the exterior lighting plan for that plan set. And then lastly, there are going to be, there's no reduction in the skylights proposed, but the applicant has proposed installing automatic shade coverings inside those skylight wells. And that will also be controlled by the overall air quoting smart lighting system that is planned for the house as entirety. And so now I'll go back to kind of refresh in memory, if you will. So this is the site. Staff just wanted to note the parcel size of 3.1 acres and the average slope of 35%. And also wanted to note the size of the existing home, 4,087 square feet. It's a 2-story home with an attached garage. And then also it was built in 1966. And so moving to the site plan. So the revised table on the staff report cleans up some of the errors that were identified at the last meeting. So for example, the max floor area of the 6,887 includes the square footage of the main house and the attached garage, and additionally, the square footage of the detached accessory dwelling unit that staff will be reviewing through a separate administrative permit. So we have a proposed residence of 6,887, that's the main residence, and the future ADU, providing for 6,887 square feet on site with a remainder of 627. The 85% of the maximum floor area, so this number was corrected, is 5,468. So staff corrected the main residence had a portion of the garage being allocated to this 85%. And so by reconciling those numbers, the main residence plus 400 square feet of the attached garage, which is 625 square feet, goes into this category. The remainder, 225, goes to the max floor area. So as the math falls, you have 5,468 square feet of the main residence. So that would leave a remainder on site of 2,062 square feet. And then the only other items that did change, and this was the correction that staff noted earlier, is the vertical height and the maximum heights. So on your staff report, it notes the previous error. These numbers reflect the correct measurements, and they also additionally reflect that net reduction of 1 foot of vertical height reduction and then 1 foot of maximum height reduction. Front, side, and rear setbacks remain the same from previous, and then parking space allocation remains the same. And so just going a little bit deeper into those square footage numbers that were kind of reallocated and parcelized. So the second story is that 2,193 square feet. The main level, and this is exclusive of the garage, is 2,875 square feet. You have a 625 square foot garage, which roughly equates to 3 parking spaces. And then you have that separately decided ADU of 1,194 square feet. And one of the notes that staff wanted to make, so when you look at, in comparison to the second story to the first story, adding in the main level and the garage together, you do get roughly about a 63% ratio. So the second story is 63% in size to the main level as it's noted on the plans. And that's excluding any of the basement square footage, as the town code doesn't require us to include that in site floor area calculations. The grading plan has not changed. This is just for informational purposes to refresh memory. Staff just wanted to note that 670 cubic yards is still estimated to be removed, moved from the site, with 185 cubic yards being exported at the end of as all the numbers fall. The materials and finishes have not changed. This is just for informational purposes and refresh once again. And so now going into the revisions. And so as staff noted, the main house has had a vertical reduction in the vertical height, which is that 28-foot vertical height limit per the town code, from 26 feet and 5 5/8 inches to 25 feet and 5 5/8 inches for a net reduction of 1 foot. And so the arrow points to that that 28-foot vertical height limit measured line. Additionally, per the town code of the 34-foot max height limit, so that's the high to low based on the slope, the house has been reduced from a 28-foot 4 3/4 inch height to a 27-foot 4 3/4 inch height. So that also gives a net reduction of 1 foot. And so the arrow to that bullet point shows the additional height measurement line. And so moving towards the revised plate heights. So the applicant has reduced the first 4 plate heights from a 14-foot previously proposed height to a 12-foot 7 3/4 inch height. So that gives us a net reduction of interior height space of roughly over 1 foot. And that's noted on the plans here as the bottom of the first floor ceiling and the measurement note. And now turning to the revised lighting plan. So as staff noted, 2 of the pool lights have been reduced or been removed from the lighting plan. So that's noted on this lighting plan from the previous presentation as the 2 X's. And also staff is just reiterating that all of the lights that are shown here on the plan, in addition to the automatic skylight covers, will be managed either through a smart lighting system, either through motion control or through timer control, so that it's not a dead switch on and off, especially for the pool itself. So it's separately controlled, and that's one of the conditions of approval that's been recommended as attachment 1 of the staff report. this is just noting the landscape plan has not changed. It still remains as previously proposed. And so staff just wanted to update the commission in terms of public comments between the last meeting and currently. Staff did send the notice on August the 14th per standard town policy within 300-foot radius of the site. There was a notice sent on August the 18th modifying the Zoom meeting identifier and removing the password. That was simply a operator error, if you will, on my half. So the meeting time did not change. It was just ensuring people could get into the actual meeting. And so between the publication of the staff report and today's meeting, we have received several letters of support from neighbors. And so those will be read into the public record. And so this slide is just talking about the design review findings as the ASCC is aware of in terms of the findings that need to be made to support approval or approve a project. Staff feels that the findings can be easily made based on staff's report. And so therefore, staff recommends that the ASCC approve the architectural review and site development permits to construct a new residence with basement, pool, and associated site improvements, subject to the recommended conditions of approval in attachment 1. And so with that, this concludes staff's presentation. I will stop screen sharing and I am available for any questions. And I'll mute myself.
Are there questions from the commission for Dylan?
Yes, Dana, I have a
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead.
Dylan, you include in your report a mention of positive support for the project. Can you flesh that out a little bit and tell us about the communications with staff that are not in support of the project, just so we have a complete picture?
Oh, in relation to communications that have occurred since last meeting and this meeting for support against or a
lack of support for the
lack of support. There we go. I would say there has not been any direct in the sense of receiving public comments either from a neighbor or from 148 Goya particularly. I would say indirectly or implicitly, there's been conversations between the project team. So I definitely will turn it over to them to elaborate more on the conversations or the collaboration in terms of modifying the project based on the neighbor, particularly at 148 Goya, their concerns. But in terms of actual communication to staff outside of the presentation that was provided to me on Friday, that would be the only piece of public comment that I've received that would be considered negative, but it was more presentation format.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, just to follow up, I've reviewed that presentation and thank you for including it or distributing it. I guess this is a question for the chair. It looks to me as if someone were to make that presentation for us, it would significantly exceed the normal sort of loosely observed time restrictions for public comment. It is a significant piece of work. I'm just wondering how we're going to deal with that here in this meeting. So maybe that's more of a question for the chair than for staff.
Well, I was going to suggest when we got to public comments that all of the commissioners had seen that report, and in the interest of brevity that we, kind of abbreviate that report. And the same goes, there were a lot of letters. I was going to suggest Jeremy, who will be reading the letters of support, that he actually read the letters from actual neighbors and for other people in the community for just being supportive. If you could just summarize what most of those have to say, we could keep this thing in check.
Sure, I'm happy to do that now through the chair. There were 9 email correspondences received by the town since the last ASCC meeting. I would classify 8 of the 9 as positive in nature. They didn't necessarily get particularly specific. Some appear to be from neighbors, others appear to be from friends of Gambier's. The one that I did want to take a little bit of time to read out loud, because it had some additional points and questions, was from Gary Getz at 275 Escobar. And let me read the relevant section if I could. It'll take just about a minute. Based on the relative locations of our properties, my observations of the story poles, and my understanding of the scope of the proposed development, I would like to call a few points to attention of the ASCC. Let me actually share this too so you can read along with me. As always, drainage and potential slides from above are potential issues for our property given the steep slopes. There is also a pool proposed for the property. I hope that the ASCC will take steps limiting permeable surfaces, requiring catchment facilities, etc., to ensure the safety of our property from inundation under a variety of foreseeable circumstances, including heavy rain, structural failures, septic leaks, and earthquake. Number two, the partial clearing of the brush still presents a fire hazard and should be completed as soon as practical. Number three, from the story poles for the roof line, it appears that the proposed structure will be more prominently seen from the road approach to our home on Escobar and from our driveway than is the current structure. Ideally, the site or structural design would be revised to lower the pitch of the roof, lower the height of the structure overall, or move the planned structure closer to Goya in order to remedy this issue. I realize that major changes could be quite costly and time consuming, but if there's anything more modest that can be done to adjust the plans to improve the sight lines without breaking the bank on the design and construction costs, it would be very helpful.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna go back to commissioner questions of Dylan at this time. Anyone have questions?
No.
No?
Nope.
All right,
Nope,
then
no further
will we
questions.
turn it over to the design group and see if you guys have anything to add, anything to emphasize?
Actually, can I speak?
Sure.
Okay. One letter that I forgot his name, didn't say, was actually from Monica, who's 2 doors down from us on Goya. So, I mean, and I don't know if Monica's on, but if she doesn't come on, then maybe he can read her letter, which is in full support. But and then I just wanted to give a quick background. I won't take too much of your time, but just wanted to say we purchased the property on May of last year with the intention of building as quickly as possible. This is my husband and I. And so we both together with Dan, the architect, who's been great, you know, we worked on the design, and then around end of December, beginning of January timeframe, I emailed all the surrounding neighbors, adjacent neighbors, and up and down the Goya and also down Escobar, giving them the full design and asking them for support letters and feedback. And given that the 148 Goya was a tenant, I sent it to her, asking her to pass it on to the owners. The story poles have been up since beginning of January, because that's when we met with the Westridge Association. Even though the flags have been up and down multiple times because of the wind, you know, it's been costly to keep it going, and it's still, the flags and the story poles are still up there. Probably the longest in Portola Valley, for all I know.
Maybe not.
Maybe not, okay. So in January, after we met with the Westridge Association, you know, we then got correspondence through the Westridge Association many weeks down with that 148 Goya had some objections. So Dan went to their property to speak to them. And for many months, it was the feedback from them was one story or nothing at all. And you know, it was quite a frustrating exercise, I could say that. And then right 2 weeks before the last ASCC meeting, then there was some movement, and you know, they kept changing what view corridor was important to them. Was it the Hoover Tower that was like, you know, the most important thing ever in their lives, or was it, you know, now the Dumbarton Bridge? I'm not quite sure the current thinking, but anyways, it's hard for Dan to deal with this moving targets of what's important in terms of the view. But in any case, you know, Dan will go through the timeline and his correspondence. But I was busy, my husband was busy undergoing chemo treatments, and which is why he didn't come to the last ASCC meeting. But it was very, I was very happy to hear the feedback from the commissioners at the last ASCC meeting. And, he was too, in that, it seemed like things were going to move forward. And, we were still looking forward to getting this going. It's been 8 months, and getting into 9 months. And since we submitted everything, since we started the process through this various association. But in any case, I'm just, we made the tweaks, we looked at the tweaks that you asked for, we made the change, some of the changes that were requested, the major ones with the skylight and the lights and all of that. And I just hope that you guys will go ahead and approve it at this point. This delay in time has multiple costs. It's not financial. And even though there is financial costs, but it's, at least my husband could have seen the project launched, but he suddenly passed away, and I'm going to go through with this. I'm going to, it's his vision, it's our vision, and I just want to say that I'd appreciate it if we could go through this without more headaches. Thank you.
Okay. Design team?
Yes, thank you. Let me share my screen if I can. So I'd like to present again an abbreviated version of the project that we discussed last time, to sort of reconnect with some of the design principles and process that we were trying to work with the project, and then also include some updates based on what's transpired since the last meeting that we had here, and changes that we've attempted to make. I also want to say it's good to see you all again, and thank you for doing this despite the various calamities that are surrounding us, it seems, ever more frequently. So it's appreciated. Again, I'm Dan Spiegel. I'm the principal at SAW. We're a hybrid architecture and landscape architecture firm in San Francisco. I'm still a native of Menlo Park, but I'll spare you the details this time. More importantly, I'm the Gambier's architect for this project. So as we discussed before, 138 Goya is a beautiful yet complex site, mixing views with steep topography and mature trees. We've already discussed the existing quirky two-story home at 138 Goya, and it's in a state of disrepair. But there's also a kind of cleverness and variety of volumes and indoor and outdoor connections and use of space that's both kind of intimate and grand. The connection between the landscape and the structure and its setting is, and relating that structure to the community is the key to our practice and also to this project. So we've drawn from the Portola Valley's rich history of architectural and vernacular forms using simple shapes and vertical moves to engage the landscape. These forms have become more adventurous over the years, but the desire to draw from the context is still the guide. We set out to design a home that would emphasize the horizon using natural materials such as cedar and natural textures such as board form concrete to integrate the design with nature, carefully studying the massing, materials, and siting through drawings, 3D models, and simulations. Notably, we're below the maximum floor area by over 600 square feet and below the maximum height by 2.5 feet. The largest element of the house is one story oriented along the slope of the hill, with the second story that twists to align roughly with the existing residence. The second story represents only 24% of the total square footage of the house when counted with the ADU and basement. The rotated floor means that there are no continuous two-story walls at any point in the structure. There's a popular walking trail below with the easement towards the bottom of the property. Mrs. Gambier has gone to great lengths so far to improve the condition of this area and intends to continue to do so. The proposed location coincides with the existing residence, which seems like a logical and responsible way to build, but pulls back from the edge a bit to recede from sight from the path below. The massing was also carefully studied to consider views from all existing adjacent structures. As you'll note on the top here in this diagram, a significant amount of the site is sloped at 35 degrees or greater, making it effectively unbuildable for the purposes of Portola Valley. We've also worked to create a harmonious blending of new and existing trees, further integrating new and old building and landscape. Here's the view from the street. The existing driveway will be reused. The small, low guest house greets you first, also providing the opportunity for the fire truck turnaround. Further along the approach to the house, native trees frame the path and the overhangs provide shade. For environmental performance, a grove of trees and a statue for the Gambier sun. As the materials age, the wood slats will blend in further with the oak trees that populate the site. Here's the east elevation showing the emphasis on the horizon as the second floor notches into the first. We considered adding a roof deck, but left it out to maintain privacy and reduce height. This rendering demonstrates how undifferentiated walls never exceed one floor. The guest house maintains these relationships, but in miniature. From the valley floor, the project is imperceptible. The site is relatively exposed, and the project is organized around a series of modified courtyards, providing quiet, contemplative spaces in each zone of the house to reflect the material palette is selected to blend with the site, even reusing old growth redwood boards from some of the existing siding. Landscaping softens the edges and blends the transition, organizing around a series of inward-facing courtyards and additional screening for privacy. So I imagine much will be made of this in the comments, but we did in fact make great efforts to organize the structure in order to respect the views of the neighbors. This is a view from just in front of their living room under the overhang with the story poles up. You may notice if you visited now that these trees seem to be absent. Again, from another angle, a large mature oak that exists. You'll note that we're trying to be sensitive to the 20-foot height difference between the two existing building pads. And if you see now, there's a fence around the pool that extends up another 5 feet. So Mrs. Gambier can tell you, as you can tell, is extremely rooted in the community, and she shared the project early, gained the support of all but one adjacent neighbors, and among many others. Here's the map of the official support letters that we have, in addition to the ones received in the record. So here we are now. In the last meeting, we heard a lot of supportive comments from the WASC, the ASCC, and members of the community. But we also heard and took seriously the objections of the property owners at 148 Goya. On July 14th, the day after the ASCC meeting, we reached out to the property owners at 148 to see if they would like to discuss possible mitigation strategies, and in particular, the ones brought up by the ASCC and WASC. But they didn't respond at all. So eventually we decided in consultation with staff to resubmit, incorporating a number of the strategies discussed at the last meeting. In the last couple of weeks, the property owners at 148 have reemerged, now with their son Peter leading. Peter told me he hasn't visited the site in 10 years, so we were effectively starting the process over again. On August 4th, Scott Stotler presented a series of substantial, in some cases radical changes to the project, all of which we studied, drew, analyzed, but unfortunately, none of which worked. Exactly a week ago today, Carter War was hired to jump in, and he provided us with new but contradictory suggestions, which we studied carefully, but unfortunately felt did too much damage to the project to proceed. We've tried to be sensitive to the neighbors' concerns and made ourselves available for meetings and design sessions from our original meeting on February 6th. You'll note in the timeline here, 159 days. This is the period of time during which the neighbors said that they would only consider a single-story design on our property. That's over 5 months. Here's a couple of references to that along the timeline. There's also been a shifting focus, as we've documented, from protecting the views of the Hoover Tower to the Dumbarton Bridge, now just to the view generally. Not only is the protected view changing, but the vantage point is as well, from their theoretical future house, as demonstrated in their earlier letters, to the current house. And the view itself is changing as the levels of vegetation seem to be in considerable flux, as we would be happy to provide documentation of. So they've changed their positions a number of times, consistent only in the goal to disrupt the project. They requested after all of these months now that the review be pushed back even further. We feel that the Gambiers have tried to reach out, but were ignored for 5 months, and they were entitled to due process. They shouldn't be required to start over and over again. After all, this time has real consequences. As you heard, Dr. Sam Gambier died of cancer since our last meeting on July 18th. To say that all the time spent up to that point had no consequence in this process is flatly unfair. So we're proceeding with the submittal, not despite the neighbors, but because we believe in the project, its merits, and its considerations. It is below the required design guidelines and zoning ordinance maximums by a considerable amount, and we additionally incorporated the following recommendations from the ASCC meeting: reducing the overall height by 1 foot, reducing the pool light fixtures, incorporating a smart lighting system for exterior landscape lighting, and programmable retractable shades for skylights to limit potential light pollution. We are open to shifting the entire mass of the building 5 feet, but we're informed that that would not be considered a meaningful change by the property owners at 148, so we did not include it due to the cost it would incur. We think that the project will be an enormous benefit to Mrs. Gambier and reflect well upon the community as a whole. Thank you. I would welcome any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner questions of the design of Dan?
None for me.
None for me.
No? Jane?
None.
Megan? No? All right then, let's open it up to public comment. Are there people in the audience who would like to comment?
All right, the chair, if you choose, I will unmute who you choose to speak first.
I'm not seeing the participants. Wait a minute. Perry, Jane, Al.
All right, I'm happy to do so if you would prefer.
Yeah, could you, attendees, I see there are 22 attendees. Yeah, but mine's not opening up, so there we go. All right. So let's see. I mean, there are a lot of people who want to speak. So
the one at the top is the first person to have raised their hand, and we can just go
okay,
down the
go
list.
ahead. So let's go ahead with that person. This Syriac rating. Okay.
All right, you are unmuted.
Hi, this is Syriac Ridding. I'm a resident of Portola Valley and a friend of the Gambiers. I live on 40 Alhambra Court. I wanted to make a general comment to the commissioners. I find it to be very important that we as a community are supporting projects that are overall very net positive for the community. It's a very significant structure. It's a beautiful design. You know, congratulations to Dan and to the Gambiers for that. I think it's a very well done project. It will be potentially a architectural landmark in the area. And I find it to be very important that we as a community don't fall into the trap of making it extraordinarily hard and slow for wonderful projects to happen in Portola Valley. It's really important that we stay open-minded. And when one neighbor has the ability to slow down a project over many months, then I think we have a problem that we need to address. Especially when you have neighbors like the Gambiers who are trying very hard to be accommodating. You know, it is absolutely unreasonable to request a one-level structure given the zoning laws allow for two-level structures and delay everything by many months. We have to be careful that Portola Valley doesn't become known to be extremely difficult to build structures that are beautiful and that are next generation style. I think we should be grateful that people want to build homes like this. The Gambiers are wonderful people. We've just lost half of the Gambiers in a very tragic situation. And I'm hopeful that we can make the life easier for Aruna going forward with this decision today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next person is Carolyn.
Carolyn, you are unmuted.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Carolyn, and I have lived in Portola Valley for the past 19 years. I want you to know that I unconditionally support the building project of the Gambiers. I have known the Gambiers for 18 years. My two children grew up with their son, Millen. I first met Aruna as we volunteered together in our son's kindergarten classroom. Both Aruna and Sanjeev have strongly supported the Portola Valley School District with their time and through contributions over the year. The Gambiers are my children's heroes and role models. They inspire them to work hard and give back to their communities. The Gambiers are the type of people that follow the rules and collaborate to ensure that all parties involved are happy with the results. They have been diligent in ensuring that the plans follow the guidelines of the Portola Valley Planning Committee. As I reviewed the project, I am so impressed with the thoughtfulness that went into the design. The house is beautiful and will be an asset to the Portola Valley community. I love the way the house blends in with the natural environment. I especially like the outdoor sitting area upstairs between the bedroom and the office. It helps break up the mass and makes the house more livable. In summary, I wholeheartedly support the project, and I'm not sure why anyone would not.
Thank you. Peter Koenig.
You are unmuted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Peter Kong. I'm the son of Stephen and Chungja Kong, who own 148 Goya.
Right.
Thanks for giving me time to speak. I just want everyone to think about, what their favorite place is about their home. Is it a nook that you like reading in? Is it your backyard? Is it a pool? So imagine that space and how much joy it brings you. And then imagine a neighbor comes in and says, I'm going to take that from you. And you say, well, let's say it's a pool. And you say, well, you already have your own pool. And they say, well, why don't you put your pool somewhere else? That's effectively what's happening to us. My parents bought that property 9 years ago, specifically because of the view and because of what we could see from different points on the lot. You can look all the way down to the bay. You can see Stanford campus. You can see Mount Diablo. And it's entirely open. And our objection right now is this proposed project blocks that view and actually takes away a lot of these very prominent scenic features. And we've been trying to work. I mean, we apologize if there have been delays. There has been a global pandemic, in case anyone's noticed. It's certainly slowed my life down a little bit. But the last month and a half, we've been trying to work very hard with Dan Spiegel to come up with proposals and alternatives that would work for both of us. And I understand in the beginning, there was a harder line with a one-story building, because our understanding is the existing structure is a one-story building with a small loft. And so we thought that that's what, similar existing structure would be appropriate. But since 2 stories is allowed, we've now kind of narrowed that scope down to looking at the specific problem. And we had a conversation with Carter Ward to say, okay, well, if we can shift the second floor massing about 24 feet, that would actually clear not the entire view, but a large portion of it. And we're willing to make that compromise. But instead, we were told why that was not possible. And multiple times, we've just been told how our ideas are completely, non-able to be incorporated. And we're trying to give different tools to come up with a workable solution. That's from our perspective. We have, so far we've hired 2 architects to try to come up with different solutions. We have another proposal again today. If you call on Scott Stotler, he'll present yet more ideas. So we keep trying, and we keep trying to come up with something that will work for both of us. Unfortunately, we're being told it's too late. We feel like we're being bullied and a little bulldozed here. We're sort of being blamed for delaying the process when, again, I feel like the whole world is in a little bit of a crisis. And we are sort of uprooting our lives and focusing on trying to figure out how to come up with a solution with this. So I'm not going to walk you through the big presentation. It sounds like you guys have all read it, and I hope you consider it. I know it's a lot, but really the only thing we care about is about 20 to 30 feet of the view from the Gambier second floor. If that can be shifted over to open up that corridor, I think that's a reasonable request. And the other thought is, personally, I feel like the design violates a ton of guidelines, but if the committee chooses to approve all this with these violations in place, including the obstruction of our view corridor, then we feel like that sets a very dangerous precedent in terms of what rules get followed and what don't, and what new construction is allowed to do to existing neighbors. So I just want you all to think about, what do you really appreciate about your property now and the adjacent lots around you, and what's going to be possible when people come in and decide to flagrantly ignore all those rules. But if anyone has any questions, I'm available. Otherwise, that's the end of my statement.
Thank you. It looks like there are a lot of people who want to speak, and I see that some of them are going to be making presentations. So if you are here as a friend, and you're here to lend support, please make your comments extremely brief. Okay, so the next person up is Carter Ward. Carter.
Hi.
Hey.
It's nice to see you all again. For everyone here, my name is Carter War. I'm an architect in Portola Valley. I spent 21 years, volunteering, on the ASCC. A lot of, the rules that the town now follows, including, the ordinances and the guidelines, were authored during the period that I was there. I was only asked to come look at this project, about 10 days ago.
Go away. Sorry. Okay. Sorry, Carter.
I visited the site. Fairly familiar with a lot of the sites, in Portola Valley. I visited the site with the Kongs, and asked for, a powwow with Dylan, and Dan to discuss, my findings, and what I saw, as some issues relative, to the design guidelines. As I mentioned, the design guidelines were, authored during that period, and I'd like to, if I could, be able to share my screen so I can look at a couple pictures, and discuss a couple things that I discussed with Dan, about ways to reduce what I feel, is an intrusion this project has, in the view that is unnecessary. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
All right. Well, to do that, I'm going to have to promote you to a panelist. Hold on one moment. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
So the view that, that I feel is being intruded upon is the one from the main patio, behind the great room, on the house. What you're seeing now in the picture, is a view of that, where, this amount that I'm drawing drawing with my cursor, to me is the part, that would make it hard for me as an ASCC commissioner, to make the findings, that the building is subservient, to the landscape, which is finding 1. And finding 3, is that, the massing of the building is congruent and works with the relationship between the properties. This is an important existing patio, and an existing space, for, the living space on this house. And that building, as it's, constituted, is quite large in the view. this is a view, of the rendering, from the architect. The interesting part, and this is what I, suggested it as a problem with the design, is that this part out here, there's a 16-foot band of master suite, and then there's about a 16-foot band of outdoor patio, on the front and back of the building. Particularly in this view, it's screened in, with the vertical slats, which, increases the apparent mass, of the building. And I believe it does unnecessarily. So what I did, in my meeting, with Dan, was suggest that, they'd already discussed moving the building, 8 feet closer, to the guest house. And that, here, this is, kind of a superimposed, plan that shows, the front patio, and the view patio on the second floor, each of which is about 16 feet. So that if, the 8 feet, and the 16 feet were, removed, this building would be back behind the existing screening and where the existing mass of the trees, actually is. So this is the existing tree that's going to be removed that would be replaced by, the addition, the second floor mass. And this is an existing tree, that does a good job of screening. So, the desire that I had, and, was encouraged, in my first conversations with Dan, is that that second floor mass, could be reduced. I understand, the tragedy, in the Gambier family, and I really appreciate it. And I'm inspired, by, the love and support you have, within the community, and the love and support that you have, of your, with your friends and neighbors. At the same time, the relationship between the properties is permanent, or at least permanent for most of our lifetimes. I don't think, that, this is an inappropriate intrusion into the relationship between, 148, Goya, by 138 Goya. And I think that the extraneous program, of the exterior patios for contemplative space on the second floor, is inappropriate, when it causes, an impact, of such a degree on the property. I'd like to, reinforce the ASCC's, responsibility. We've reminded them, people for decades, that no one, is completely entitled to, the maximum floor area allowed on each property, nor on the, the maximum building height. The ASCC has the authority and the responsibility, to give guidance to that. I came in here to, externally, help, provide a resolution. I think that the removal of the 16 feet of outdoor space on the second floor, and potentially sliding the building 5 to 8 feet, as previously suggested, would accomplish all of those adjustments to make the relationship between 138 and 148, compatible with the design guidelines.
Thank you.
And
You're not done? Are you finished? Okay. Monica Cheney?
Hi, everyone. It's Monica Cheney here. I live at 158 Goya Road. So you could say that that's the second uphill neighbor from the Gambier's home. And I wanted to support Aruna, of course, on a personal basis and welcome her to the neighborhood again. But I also just wanted to speak as someone who has a home that is on the uphill slant from both of these homes. I think that the Gambiers have done a nice job trying to build or design a project that does the best it can to work with its neighbors and the concerns. I note that it's my understanding this property project does not require any variances. And I have a hard time when we start adding new requirements. And I just heard Carter talking, and hello, Carter. Carter designed my house. Carter's wonderful. I just think that if we start getting into the business of creating new rules, that it becomes very challenging. I think that when people buy a property, they have a bundle of sticks and property rights, and it becomes very uncertain for people to suddenly have new rules imposed upon them. And it seems to me that they have done everything they can. It is a tricky property. It's fairly narrow. I know the property very well. My grandparents' best friends live there. It's long and narrow, and there is quite a steep, sort of cliffside for whatever.
You there? Monica?
So I think they've done a reasonably strong effort to accommodate the needs of their neighbors. And, I just can't stress enough. I think property owners need to have an expectation and an understanding under the law when they purchase their property. And it seems to me that we're now sort of imposing a new criteria on them. So thank you, Aruna. I'm sorry about your loss in the recent times period here and before, and welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Catherine Stamey?
Catherine, you're unmuted. You need to unmute yourself now.
Catherine? And so, Carrie, should we move on?
Yeah. So, Catherine, we'll try you again in a little bit.
And I see Monica Cheney's up again, but we'll move to Dick Levy.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't want to comment on the aesthetics of the project, but I do want to comment on this process. I built a house, my wife and I built a house in Portola Valley 20 years ago. We found the town to be extremely tough, extremely rigorous, and extremely fair. And the process was a good experience all in all. This process, I see a lot of rigor in what your commission has done and the review of this, but the complaints of a single homeowner in the area appeared to me to take a long, long time, to be almost whimsical and arbitrary, and to be unfair and unreasonable. I don't think we can tolerate a process where somebody can come in at any time after the information is there and complain and set a project back by months or even years at a time. That just doesn't seem right. It's not something we should be proud of as a community. I think we should be proud of having everybody having a say, but not allowing that say to stretch things out an interminable amount of time. So I'm complaining about the process, not the product here. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Stotler?
This is Scott. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. This is Scott Stotler, Stotler Design Group. I've been involved with designing many hillside homes through my career. I was commissioned by the Kongs. They had asked me to give my input, my professional input. You have to understand I'm in a glass house here, so I'm not used to wearing this hat. But what I did was I started looking into the plans, and it took a while to get my head around this. And I can tell you that in my experience in processes, and this is not something that is a good thing necessarily, but average projects that I will do in hillsides, whether it's Los Altos Hills, Los Altos, other areas, we are 6 to 8 months before we get to our first public hearing. And that just happens to be standard, in the business. I've had projects that have taken 2, 3. I had one project that took 13 years to get through in Monterey County. Not that that's an example, and nobody should have to go through that. But it took a while to get my head around this proposal. And what I did is I really studied this design. I noticed that once I got familiar with the design, that this design on the first floor, there's 15 foot from the first floor up to the second floor. 15 foot, which in custom homes, 11 foot is more of a standard. We're consistently doing tall header heights, which are 8 foot. This house happened to have 10-foot tall windows. So the windows are up at 10 feet, which is 2 foot higher than a standard custom home, a high-end home. Also, I noticed that the architect's selected renderings and exterior elevations were done in a way to where you couldn't really see and appreciate the fact that the upper level overhung the lower level about 16 feet, which typically when I'm designing, if we have a 2 or 3 foot cantilever, that's considered a mass, but 16 foot on the points is quite an overhang. And when you count the actual rectangles of the main first level, it was around 2,184 square feet, not taking into account the hallway to the garage and the garage, but just the mass of the first level living is 2,184. The second level mass is approximately 2,856, which is 600 something square foot over what the lower level footprint below it is. I've never done this before or seen this before to this extreme. That's just my opinion. I also noticed that around this site, after walking through it, I think about a week and a half ago, is that on this site, around the perimeter, there's about a 2 foot redwood retaining wall around the house where the whole yard has been filled up. So it looks like this lot, there's a lot of artificial fill on this site on the back pad area. And it seemed to me that, I mean, if I were building this house, I would definitely want to get rid of that dirt, recompact it and re-engineer it and come down. But I also noticed that, and I was looking at how we can get the Gambiers what they really want and what Dan would like to do in the design. So my takeaway after I studying it, and I really did study it, is that I felt that within reason, there's a 5 foot by 31 foot corridor that's a hallway between the garage and the house. And that's used also as a private pool courtyard for Aruna and for the family to enjoy. And I can appreciate that. Although based on that, that lengthens the mass of the house another 31 feet over. And so what I was contemplating, and I looked at a study, and you'll see my exhibit that I prepared for the Kongs, is that I think reasonably you could take a couple foot of grade off of this lot, and that is not a lot of dirt to export, and make this house into a better footprint pad, and then keep the finished floor down to around 625, which would be lowering about 2.5 to 3 feet. Also eliminate.
Excuse me, this is Dana Breen. Could you start to close up your comments, please?
Yes, I'm almost done. I appreciate the 3 minutes.
There are a lot of speakers.
Correct.
All right. It's also kind of hard to follow you without the graphics. But go ahead.
So our end result was that we felt that the Gambiers can keep the same floor plan they've got, the same mass they've got, everything, with being making some changes of lowering the pad, dropping the house elevations a little bit where we go more of 8 foot tall ceiling or window heights rather than 10 foot. And as a result, this house could be shifted by the hallway being eliminated and moving the pool, and them creating a much more larger yard and a much larger area for the pool, and virtually have the same house that they've got now by shifting it over. And by lowering it also allowed the shift as well. That's basically what my end result was. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sally Ann Reese.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks guys. I got to tell you, I appreciate the position the ASCC gets put into, and I really value you guys and the efforts you're putting in. I did have a look through the report. I'm not a architect by any means, but I wanted to, there's a question in here about the views, because when I built my house, we have a spectacular view. And over the year, we have like about a 180 view. And over the years, our neighbors' trees have grown up and sort of blocked a big, what I felt like was a big part of my view. And so we approached them and said, we'd like to cut down those trees. And they said, well, then you'll just be looking at the roof of our house, which was true. And so we got thinking about it when we realized we've got a 180 view, and there are houses that are in our view, but we look out to the view, not at the houses. And so I have a question here for the ASCC, which is, were there trees there before and they got cut down that changed the view for the people up above? I'm kind of curious because I saw some, like, I can't imagine that they've been looking at the rooftop and without those trees. And so that's my question. Is there trees that have been cut down that have made the whole thing much more visible? And how much of the view is actually being lost? Curious to know.
I believe trees were cut down. They were eucalyptus. And the ASCC did not see it prior to the trees being there. So to being cut down. So that's, I don't know if staff can elaborate, but
yeah, no, I appreciate that, Dana. And I think that the biggest thing is that, I know that as somebody that is in the middle of people above me and people below us, we all have to work together, but we do live in a community of 1 to 2 acres and we do see houses. So I do think that there's a precedent that I'm sure you guys can pull on from before. But anyways, best of luck, guys.
Thank you. Ajit Shah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for taking the time to listen to all this public comment. First and foremost, I've been a resident of Portola Valley for 30 years. I've built my house in 1992. And we live in a neighborhood that's actually much closer, where the homes are much closer to each other in the Corte Madera area. And the reality of life is, when you buy a piece of property, you realize that it's a moment in time and you get to work within the design constraints and the people that surround you. I couldn't anticipate what was going to happen next door or what's going to happen in the town with respect to guidelines. And so you work within the constraints, you build your home, and then over time, other people buy the properties next to you and they get to build their home, and you have to work with them within design constraints. And I really believe very strongly in the philosophy that there are very important specific and objective guidelines. And those those have to do with daylight planes, setbacks, height limits. And I think the reason that those numbers get defined is because at a very high level construct, you can't arbitrarily decide for every lot what the setback needs to be, what the daylight planes need to be, and height limits. And so the job of an architect is to design a home that sits within the very specific guidelines that the town creates, and then work within some degree of variation to accommodate more subjective things like view lines. And realizing that you can't preserve everything for everybody in the neighborhood. And my assessment, and look, I appreciate the fact that they went and hired an architect, but let's realize this. At the end of the day, everybody can hire people that are going to support their points of views, okay? So I kind of would ask you to say to yourself, our planning team worked with the Gambiers to see that they met the subjective guidelines and the objective guidelines that we put forth as a town. They spent 8 months building and designing something, and throw emotion completely out of this, okay? When I look at this design, I look at the fact that this, and I've walked the property, I've walked the upper property, and I've walked the downstairs property. This does not change the ridgeline of Portola Valley. It has minimal impact on the neighborhood and preserves sight lines for everybody that's surrounding them. And when you look at a 5-degree angle of somebody's 180-degree point of view line, view lines, and 5 degrees get impacted, I think it's hard for me to be sympathetic to zero change. And, while I understand that, we get to all reminisce about what was important to us in a house that we might have lived with 5 years, if we don't live there anymore, or we're renting it out, we don't have the right to then impose our memories, however long they were, on a person who's worked within the system to design and build a home that meets the guidelines that Portola Valley sends out. So I would just say, in closing, we need to support residents in new construction. The ASCC process is imperfect, but it is the standard process for construction for the community. And I would really say to you guys, everything that I've seen about this project, I've looked at all the plans, is it meets the subjective and objective guidelines and the philosophy of this town. And you should approve it, not because of the emotional reasons, because it's the right thing to do for us as a community.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to ask everyone for brevity. Catherine Stamey's up. Again, hopefully we can get you unmuted this time.
I've unmuted.
Okay, good. We hear you.
Okay. My name is Catherine Stamey, and I have lived in Portola Valley for 47 years. I love this town, and I have visited and thoroughly walked that lot at 138 Goya. And I am familiar with the plans for the proposed home. And in my opinion, it will be a wonderful addition and blend well into our town. And I think it should be approved and the family be allowed to go ahead and build their home and enjoy their life in Portola Valley.
Thank you. Kathy Fitzgerald.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully this won't be a too long a night for you. I appreciate the time that you're putting into this. Again, I'm a neighbor of Aruna's. I've been in Portola Valley for 20 years, and our house is at 15 Dos Loma Vista, which is one street east of Escobar. I walk the trail behind Aruna's house on Goya almost every day with my dog. The house that is existing on that property right now is a true eyesore. And I'm excited to see Aruna's house replace the one that's there. I also have been incredibly impressed with the improvements that Aruna and Sanjeev have made on the property as far as the path behind their house. They've opened up the entire hillside. There's native plants growing there now. You can actually see up the hill. It's a huge improvement. And the trail is very well preserved. I wish everyone would follow their lead and create such a nice walkway space. I understand that the neighbors do have some issues with the design. There's a couple problems that I see. At the 11th hour, they're bringing in outside opinions and actually trying to change the design of the house, which in my opinion, is very solid and is in keeping with Portola Valley's planning and architectural interests. It's hard to make changes like this. Aruna and Dan have done amazing work as far as keeping up with what the cons have requested. I think that it's kind of interesting that the neighbors next door have this concern about the view, given the fact that they're currently renting their house. I understand that they are planning at some point in time to rebuild and build a brand new house on that lot, which will give them the opportunity to, find the appropriate views and the corridors that they are seeking. So it's my opinion that Aruna and her family continue forward with this. And I hope that you guys can approve her plan. Thank you.
Okay, let's try to keep our comments not redundant. Okay, Andy Hutchinson.
Hey guys, you know what, Dan, I will follow your suggestion and not be redundant. Everything I would have to say would be redundant. I support this project. It meets the guidelines. The change in view has been minimal. The Gambiers have been over backwards trying to make this work, and we really appreciate you guys taking all these things into consideration, and I will let you proceed with the next person. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
I appreciate it. Okay, so the next person who hasn't spoken, Anu, you're up.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi there. This is Anu here on 128 Escobar. As you all know, I recently built my home here, also on a hillside, which is not an easy thing to do. I've seen and walked Aruna's property, and both from her site and down Escobar, which has a beautiful view of the property from down below. And I do love how she is setting back the house a little bit more. I think it goes beautifully with the hillside. It makes the view from that side and the horses down below so gorgeous to look at. And I want to say that I'm curious, you know, it's what an amazing gift that the neighbors' parents have given these people of buying this home 9 years ago. But when you're buying a property, I think it's also your responsibility to know what everyone's rights are and rights to build are on that property and lot. And it is difficult dealing with neighbors who don't want to see a corner of your house here or there. I think the view is beautiful. I'm sure that I'm curious to see the Kwong's property, the structure that they plan to build. Are they going to go 2-story? Because I'm sure their second story would be completely unobstructed. I think it's important to be helpful to each other in this neighborhood. The people are wonderful, and to not make this an awful, frustrating process, because the people who live here are kind. And I think everybody just wants to make everything, the community, stronger. And that's all I'm going to say. I think Aruna is an amazing, amazing member of this community. We have been here for 15 years and we love it. And I'm glad she's moving from one hill to the other. So I hope this happens soon.
Thank you, Anu. Carolyn? Are you there?
Carolyn's already spoken.
Oh, she has, all right.
I spoke.
Chitra? Chitra, you there?
Hello. Well, I was going to speak, but now I'm going to not, because my husband actually very eloquently supported this project. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Dan, saying that I've seen some of his work and he is very, very good about not making the homes, his projects very, what's the word? They seamlessly go into the property very well without being obtrusive to the community and the view side. So I have complete faith in Dan. And I support Aruna's project completely. I've seen the project and I think it's beautiful. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Dick Levy?
He's already spoken.
He has already spoken? My goodness.
Yep.
Jacqueline?
She hasn't.
I have multiple people stacked up, so, okay.
Actually, you only have 2 hands that are raised currently, and those are 2 people that have spoken before.
They've already spoken, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Let me go back to them.
It looks like they put their hands down.
Okay, if they put their hands down,
I
then
actually,
they're, all right.
sorry, Chair.
Sure.
I lowered their hands because they did have an opportunity to speak. So just to kind of clarify the queue, if you will, for people to speak, because this is the public comment period. So my understanding is that a person has one opportunity to speak. So raising the hand is for people that have not spoken yet. But the two parties that do have their hands up still have already spoken to the matter as members of the public. So it's the chair's discretion if they want to bring them forward again after everybody else has spoken. But I do believe we have a few people left in the queue that have not spoken first. So that was my doing in terms of lowering their hands.
Okay, I see, Dylan, but so the only hands up are Peter and Scott. Are there any other people who haven't spoken who would like to put their hand up? Okay, so yes, we can hear from Peter again, briefly.
Hi, thanks for taking my comments again. It's clear that the Gambiers have a lot of friends in the neighborhood. And again, we're not trying to stop the project. We're just trying to save our view. And if the commission is interested, I can walk you through some of the presentation or answer any questions. I just didn't feel like, since I had brief time, that would be worthwhile. But since we're at the end, I wanted to see if there was anything you guys wanted to address or take a look at or have me explain.
Well, I think we've all seen your presentation, but I will ask fellow commissioners, do you have any questions?
I've looked through the presentation. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
No.
All right, Jane?
I don't have any questions either.
All right, so then we'll see if Scott has anything that he'd like to add now. Scott?
Yes, can you hear me? I was unmuting myself,
Yes.
sorry. I'll be
Would you
really
like
fast.
to make another comment, another brief comment?
I'll be really fast. One of the things that I forgot to mention was it's interesting because the Kongs, their angle of their selected view is the exact same angle as the Gambiers, which I can appreciate what the Gambiers want is their view. By shifting it over, they would keep that same view. The other thing I just wanted as a takeaway is to remember that the first floor is 15 foot from floor to floor. I think Dan's going to drop it a foot, which make it 14 foot. That's extremely tall for even a single story house with the second level up over it. So the 15 foot is almost 2 stories before you get to the second level. That's all I wanted to finish on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any other hands up, I will close public comment.
Chair, may I have an opportunity?
Yes.
There were 2 questions that came through the public comments that
Yes.
I'd like to answer.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first one was related to timelines. So I just wanted to spell out some of the timelines. So as we're abundantly aware, we're still under the shelter in place and emergency order from the town. So this application did come in before that order on February the 7th. And so the town suspended or closed, if you will, March the 16th. Previous to that closure, I had instructed both the project team and the neighbors to begin discussions related to the view corridor issues. In fact, this was something that was discussed before the formal application was submitted in January, as the previous staff report indicates. In terms of the timeline, staff does agree that the timeline has been lengthy. That is no fault of both the project team, mainly because we just resumed public hearings on June the 22nd. And this was one of the first projects that I and the director had discussed bringing forward to the ASCC once we resumed. And the main reason for that length of time in between was just because of the town's essential services operations. So we limited public hearings, we limited application submittals. So we were very limited on our services and being able to process this application. So I just wanted to kind of clarify a statement that was made in relation to the timeline. Obviously, the timeline took longer than it should have, but I think it was external circumstances that drove that. But in terms of the conversations between the neighbor and the project team, that was mediated early on in the process. And so the challenge, the assertion that the length of delay based on solely the neighbor's non-responsiveness is, I think, an inaccurate statement. The project team did, and Dan and the team can elaborate, but they did make many concerted efforts, as he noted. But I just wanted to point out that staff had reached out early on to the project team to relay information to the neighbor to resolve this issue, and also to resolve it through WASC, which I think they've done earnest effort. There was a second question that came up, and while we were discussing this, I kind of did a little rough PowerPoint presentation regarding to tree removal. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick, because I just wanted to provide evidence of whether or not there's actually been tree removals on 138 Goya prior to the project. So can everyone see my screen? I apologize of the roughness of my design. So this is a snapshot. This is historical satellite photos from Google Earth. One of the fascinating things with Google Earth is you can actually see satellite photos all the way back into like the 50s or 60s.
1949.
But I wanted to, yeah. So it's really fascinating to review as a hobby. But in this instance, I wanted to just point out, this is a snapshot of 2011. So as you can note, 148 Goya, their tree canopy and vegetation, particularly within the site adjacent to 138 Goya. And I'm going to use the magics of PowerPoint to show you, this is 2018. So as you notice that the site has been denuded, particularly in the top area, you can see more of the roof line of the structure. But more importantly, you can see there's actually a trunk of a tree. I believe it's a eucalyptus that was mentioned. As you can notice that the view corridor or the tree canopies within this area has been enhanced, if you will, or the tree canopy and vegetation has been removed over the years. And this is a 2018 image. I wasn't able to pull out a high resolution image from recently, but this is since 2018. So this is 2 years before the actual application has come before the ASCC. So I just wanted to answer that question, since it did come up as a member of the public mentioned if any trees have been removed. And so just wanted to do some investigative work to provide more information and evidence to the ASCC as they render their decision. Did you have any questions, Chair?
That's great. Any commission questions about that, the tree removal? No?
Nope.
All right, then let's bring it back to the commission.
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Pardon?
Madam Chair, it's Cara Silver, the town attorney.
Okay. Yes.
Hi there. So, Dylan asked me to attend this hearing, and I just wanted to let you know that since there have been some new issues that were raised by 148 Goya at the hearing, from a due process standpoint, it would be appropriate to ask the applicant if they would like to address any of those issues before the public hearing.
All right.
Yes, thank you for that. So we do have a few, we have a fairly detailed response to the presentations that were submitted into the record, but because they were not presented in a direct way during this hearing, we don't feel it's necessary to go line by line, but there are a couple things that we could share really quickly that might be pertinent. I believe my screen can be seen now. So just as a question of process and a question of what the key features were that were trying to be protected, we'll note in the most recent presentation that they've changed entirely. And in fact, the Hoover Tower, which was at the beginning the driving force behind the complaint, is no longer even listed among the concerns, and now is a kind of general assemblage. There's also a curious question of there was a assertion made in the presentation that we were trying to mislead with the view corridors with the information that we provided to the ASCC, but this diagram on the bottom is in fact the one that was a part of the presentation in our application in 2007, which shows accurate view corridors. The one they most recently highlighted in their document is sort of emblematic of what I consider the problem to be. One is that this is in reference to Scott Stotler's comment as well, there is some indication of what the existing view corridors are, and that's the orientation of the house that they have currently. And so there are other view corridor potentials on the site, but in fact, the house is oriented in a particular direction to view out in this way, and that's what we were trying to take advantage of. The most recent view corridor center line that they submitted in their document would show that it goes directly through this large protected oak tree, which would screen most, if not all, of the kind of impact of our project. And so it seems clear to me that there's a kind of shifting question as to which is the important view corridor, which makes it extremely hard to address in a way that's satisfying. It continually moves. There's a few things through the presentation that we could go through that have to do with heights and the relative way that these images are presented. They've been scaled in some ways that don't actually match the actual scaling of the image that we had, but we don't need to go into that in particular. What I will add is there was a question, we went through like a tremendous amount of work to do analysis of each of even these 11th hour proposals that were given to us. Many of them contradict each other, and many of their sort of newly hired experts contradict one another. And so we've been trying very hard to kind of address these as sensitively as we can, but it's not so easy to make such a thing work when the direction is constantly shifting. But to follow up on Dylan's conversation about the trees, we picked up in May 2019, and you'll see that there in fact have been additional removals that have taken place in the key view corridor line. I can't say who or when or how, I have no idea. But between when the application went in, when the property was purchased in May 2019, there does appear to be some significant difference to May 20th. And there's an observation that when we visited the site and observed these eucalyptus trees that were here, they are sort of now mysteriously absent. So they are eucalyptus trees, they're allowed to be removed. But I think when it comes to a question of how we're supposed to assess the view corridors that exist, what are the things that they have become accustomed to over time? And what are the efforts that can be made in order to have projects impact each other less? This is a thing that we found sort of distinctly not helpful. And I would say that I certainly recognize the ASCC's mandate to impose limits that are beyond what the strictest zoning code guidelines are. That's part of the charge, but we're well within those restrictions, and we've done everything that we can to take all of your feedback and responses into account and implement them into the project, even without the sign-on that it would lead to any sort of further approval of it, that we were willing to sort of engage the process sincerely and study all possible options up to the very last minute.
Aruna, do you have any comments?
No, meetings have been going on long enough, but I just want to say, I would really appreciate a swift approval, and I appreciate everyone's time in evaluating this. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, then we will now bring it back to the commission. And Jane, do you want to start off?
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I liked this design when it first came in last month, and I still like this design. It's simple, it's elegant. I appreciate that the architect and the owner have not constructed everything to the maximum possible, like some projects we receive. And that I have looked at the page 6 of the general guidelines, and to me the drawing on page 6 looks very similar to the construction that we've got now with the angles of the views. So I don't see a problem with this design meeting our design guidelines. I appreciate the 1 foot reduction in the structure and the interior plate heights, and that the pool lights have been reduced to 5, that the time controls have been added for all exterior lighting, and that the automatic shades have been provided for all the skylights. And I wouldn't have any problem supporting this project, but let's hear from the rest of the commissioners. Thank you.
You're welcome. Al?
Sure. I also think that this is an excellent project. I think that it's an innovative, creative, very distinctive design, good sighting, attractive materials. I think that the landscaping plan is excellent. Only landscaping close to the house, lots of untouched areas, good plant selection, mostly native, low water. I mean, just lots and lots of positives. The one controversial aspect of this project really is the view corridor impacted unreasonably, and I don't believe it is. I think that from 148, there's still going to be many opportunities for expansive views, and there will be some impact, but it's not an unreasonable, awful impact. So from my point of view, I can definitely make the finding that that this is not an unreasonable impact to the view. So I'm in support of the project as it is designed at this point.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah. Well, I just want to say just one little thing is that I do believe that so many of our existing homes that are here now have already taken the intelligent viewpoints, let's say, from each property. Okay, so when you see properties kind of laid on top of each other, this one has this view, this one has that view, this one has that view, and they kind of maybe overlap a little bit, but everyone in Portola Valley has the opportunity to enjoy beauty. And I feel that this neighbor at 148 maybe wanted this tiny sliver of a view, and it's unreasonable to restrict this homeowner below for their view. And I mean, I could personally walk around my property and go to any corner of my property and say, wait, I want that view. Wait, I want that view. But that's not what it is. Let's enjoy what we have and let's others enjoy what they have. I don't believe that this new project is going to hinder the exceptional views that the upper property has. I can absolutely make the findings to support this project. I love that they did lower the height, and that's a wonderful thing to do through this process. The reduction in light in the pool, and I think this is a gorgeous project, and I really hope this family can go ahead and enjoy this property, and the neighbor support and community support is what Portola Valley is all about.
Thank you, Megan. Dave?
Yes, I have a few comments. I'll start with the tiniest of them. I hope that the olive trees are non-fruiting.
No more Olive Gate.
Sorry. I just wanted to get that one out before I forgot it, because it is the smallest of the issues. I won't repeat all the positive comments from my colleagues. I support them all. I agree with them all. I don't have any reservations about approving this project. In terms of the view corridor, I would note that on the opening slide of the presentation prepared by 148 Goya, it's pretty clear that the only view that is obstructed by the flags and story poles is of the tree line behind the house.
Yeah.
So if you pull that up and take a look at it, you'll see that, in fact, according to 148 Goya, their view of the bay, their view of downtown Palo Alto, of the Dumbarton Bridge, none of that is actually obstructed by this new proposal. They're showing us that it's not. So just sort of taking a satellite view and thinking about what the ASCC's mission is, we're here to review proposals as submitted. We take input from various sources and consider that, but it's not a popularity contest. It's our decision to make. While the amount of time somebody's lived in Portola Valley may have, a certain amount of relevance, it really doesn't affect our review. And by the same token, the concerns of a single neighbor on a particular fairly narrow issue aren't a driving factor for me in our decision making. I'm really looking at the proposal and evaluating whether I think it's acceptable. And in this case, I think it is. I probably have some other thing. I was just also going to note that the existing trees on 138 Goya's property obstruct more of the view than the new house is going to. So I'm having trouble buying into the arguments about a loss of view corridor. It's a very speculative issue. Who knows what the owners at 148 Goya are going to build someday? Who knows when that's going to be or if it will ever happen? It's my understanding that they have not actually occupied this house. It's occupied by a tenant. So the concerns about the loss of a very narrow sliver of the view corridor, in my view, is a very speculative thing. And the only thing I'm sympathetic to is the apparent incredible amount of effort and expense they've gone to try to, present alternatives. But we're not here to evaluate somebody else's alternative design. We're looking at the design presented by the applicant, and I am in favor of approving it. I'd be happy to make a motion. I think it's a very worthy project, and I believe that we should take action on this evening. That's all.
Thank you. My comments, I mean, I said the first time around, I think it is the most beautiful project. It's gorgeous, but I have a real problem with the 16 feet on the second story. I think, listening to Carter's comments, I think it is an intrusion. I think it takes out about, between 20 and 30% of the view. So I was hoping to see it massaged even further than it has been. I think it's a beautiful project, but I just cannot support that 16 feet there as proposed. But let's proceed. I also want to say for the landscape,
Deanna,
yes?
you're saying the 16 feet of the
That sit to the left of the existing tree. So it's that second story.
You don't like the 16 feet of the view deck.
That's basically the master bedroom.
Yes, the master bedroom. I think it sticks out just too far. But it feels to me like you guys are all on the same page in terms of wanting to approve.
Yeah.
I think it should have been massaged more. I think it's intrusive.
Dana, if I may speak.
Yes. Want to talk to you guys. Let's talk.
From viewing from the actual 148 property.
Yes.
Their view is dynamic and incredible.
It is.
And the view that's getting taken away from that little sliver of a corner by the pool deck is not your daily view.
It feels to me like it is part of the significant view.
But not their daily view of the home site as it exists now.
I know. But I think that sweeping view, it's just going to take a chunk of that. Yes, Dave.
Well, all I can see out my windows now is smoke, so.
I know, we can see it too. We can see
Who's taking my view?
Yeah. I just wanted to comment on the concept of view corridor a little bit.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the concept of view corridor is from the perspective of the public. In other words, we are really concerned about view corridors from Portola Road, from Alpine Road. There are sort of defined view corridors and view corridor easements. I think that the concept of view corridor being applied to the interests of a single property owner for a really very tiny portion of their overall view is in my view, we should not give that a tremendous amount of weight. It's not a view corridor
that's semantics.
violated. I'm sorry?
That feels semantic to me. I think it's more the significant view of 138. This is going to intrude significantly into that view.
But see, Dana, I disagree. I do not believe that 148's view is significantly threatened by this structure. I do not.
Okay.
I agree with Megan.
All right.
I think 148 is going to see the structure more prominently than the existing one. But again, I look back to the photos presented by 148 Goya, and the view that's being obstructed is of a group of trees that are on the back side of 138 Goya's property.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even rise to the level of obscuring the view of downtown Palo Alto. The structure, while it may seem tall from some respects, doesn't come up high enough to get higher than the tree line.
And in
I
fact,
think if they could have come down another 2 or 3 feet so that when you're looking at the story poles, that you would still be able to see the water and the mountains beyond.
But Dana, they're already down 7 feet on our maximum height. I mean, they have not built to the max. They have not put a pitched roof.
I know all of that stuff.
Not added a chimney. They could have done so much more to that property that would have ruined that neighbour's views permanently and much more extensively, but they have not. They have stuck within the guidelines. They have followed them.
And when this project for 148 does come to us, and whenever that may be, they could easily build a second story allowable by us in the town that would recapture those views.
I mean, that's one of the big unknowns for me is what happens next with 148. They could ostensibly design around this.
Well, but
that's not the way it is now.
It's further north. It is further northeast than it is southeast. It really is.
I get it. I get it.
And I'd also like to comment on one of the Conservation Committee's comments regarding Detrichia in the vineyard of 148 that is invading 138 and Jasper Ridge. And I mean, if they're going to be neighbourly, they could start weeding their yard. And certain things should, they need
to come up now.
Well, I'd like to sort of bring us back to the site and the application. And I respectfully disagree with Dana about the significance of the impact on the view corridor, but I certainly respect Dana's opinion on this.
Yeah.
It's not often that we have a divided vote. I think it's possible we might in this case, but it seems to me we've pretty much gone over most of the aspects of this project, and maybe it's time to entertain a motion.
Yes.
Go for it, Dave.
2 in a row in the same meeting?
Well, you're so good at it.
Anyone else want to take a crack at it?
Well, first of all, I'll say that I'm comfortable making the findings, the required findings. And I believe that the project substantially complies with the design guidelines and certainly respects all of the required limitations. So I'll move to approve this with the staff conditions. And for my part, I don't propose adding any additional conditions. So I move to approve it as presented and with staff conditions.
Okay, I'll second that.
All those in favor? Oops, sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am not an aye. I am negative.
Okay.
And so there we go. The project passes.
Yay! Milo says yay!
Congratulations.
There you go.
Just a point of clarity for the record. Who made the second motion?
Al.
Okay. Al second the motion.
Yeah.
And then the vote, since we didn't do a roll call vote, it was kind of all unanimous.
4-1.
So it's 4-1 with Dana voting nay and all other commissioners voting aye.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thank you
You
all.
too, Dana.
Congratulations.
Bye.
All right, people, moving on.
So
So-
Jeremy's left, so I'm kind of taking on his task, or what typically Laura does. This is new territory for me. I was just instructed by Carol to make sure that the agenda meeting minutes were approved, but I'm happy to do whatever I need to do in this portion of the meeting. I'm kind of.
Well, I
I'm
doubt
sure-
we have any commission reports because nobody's really been going on site anywhere.
Okay.
And we
And I
read
can
your staff
for
report was part of the packet.
Yep.
So we should go to minutes.
Yeah. And I think because it was my birthday, so I
Right?
was.
I've got 3 corrections on the minutes.
Okay.
On page 199 or page 4 of the minutes, Mr. Paul's 8th sentence said the town cannot in any good conscience, it should be conscience. Page 5, Greg and Brenda Monks is spelt with a U, not an O. And page 7, Dave Strom is STROHM, not strong, as the signee of the letter from the now defunct Westridge Association.
Okay.
Good catches, all of those. I admire your diligence.
Yeah,
How
that's
bored
impressive.
are we?
I noticed one and I thought,
It's great.
I'll keep going.
That's what happens when you have too much time on your hands.
Yeah, you think? That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't find any problems. The minutes look good to me.
Yeah,
All right, so is there a second on the minutes?
I'll second. Did somebody
All those in
move
favor?
to accept them?
So Jane, you were first, David second. The minutes are passed
Okay.
Yep. Aye.
Excellent.
Okay.
and the meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
All right.
Hooray, good
Okay.
job.
Thank you, you guys.